The following video contains products which were received free of charge for the purpose of review. I've not been paid for this review and all opinions remain my own. Thanks to Humbrol for sending these items out to have a look at. Recently, Humbrol announced that they were working on a new generation of paint. It was their intention that this paint range would improve on the previous issues that their acrylic paints have had. To that end, Generation 2 was introduced. As far as I'm aware, all of the paints featured in this video are pre-production and not yet available in the shops. And Humbrol have sent these to me so I can take a look and see what they're like. And hopefully there'll be an improvement. So join me as I take a quick look at how these new Humbrol Generation 2 paints fare when they're brushed onto a model with a paintbrush. Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench. So before I get into this, I'd like to give a quick shout out to James from LPJ Models, who in my opinion is possibly the best person to give this paint range a test. So after you've finished watching my video, please go and take a look at his for a second opinion. Anyways, let's get started with this Humbrol Generation 2 paint. I've got some plastic sprues here which have kindly been donated by another YouTuber, Plastic Alchemist. So a massive thank you to Plastic Alchemist for this. I prepared two of the sprues by spraying them with the Humbrol No. 1 spray primer which I was provided by Humbrol. I'm not going to lie, I'm actually pretty impressed with this primer. It came out quite evenly and gave a nice surface finish in the end. This is definitely a product I would consider using for more of my builds. So my plan is to use one of these sable hair brushes which I've also been given to brush on to the plastic components, the various paints that I've received. I'm going to apply the paint to a certain section of the plastic kit in its unthinned version. And then I'm going to add a few drops of the acrylic thinners that Humbrol have also provided and then do a comparison test. I'll do this with all of the colours that I've got to see if there's any differences between the different shades. And just for the sake of argument, I've also got a sprue which I didn't bother putting any primer on, and I'm going to use that as well. But I noticed when I started painting on this one that the paint just didn't want to stick at all. Now I'm sure someone will mention in the comments that I neglected to wash that plastic sprue, and that's the reason why it's not sticking to it. So that could be the case. So I put that to one side, got myself another side of plastic sprue which hadn't been painted, and then gave that a good wash in warm soapy water to remove anything that might be on there such as mold release. Then I repeated the process with some of the paints to see if I had a better or worse finish than when using a primer. So let's take a look at the results. On the uncleaned or unprepared plastic, you can see that I just pretty much gave up because it just wasn't sticking. I mean, this 165, which was unthinned at the top here, that went on, but you can see brush marks in there. But every single other paint that I put on here, it just started sort of receding and pooling rather than sticking to the plastic. So yeah, but looking at the version which I did clean, so I've got 165 at the top here, again unthinned and then thinned, and I would just like to point out that it's almost like it's not quite dry, the thin one. These thinners are supposed to increase the drying time so that you don't get brush strokes left behind, and it seems that at times the drying time is massively increased, so be aware of that when you come to use the Humbrol thinners. The 78 there, unthinned on the right, thinned on the left. There's not a massive difference in there. The unthinned is a little bit more dense, but there is still a little bit of sort of receding and pooling up. The 116 paint, probably slightly better when it's thinned. You can see brush marks on there. And the 26, again, maybe a little bit better when it's unthinned, in the sense that it's got more pigment density, but the thinned one's a little bit smoother, but you would need a couple of coats. And then the 90, there's not much in that, to be brutally honest. I think that you're going to need to put a couple of layers of that on anyway. The Azure Blue, I've got the unthinned on the right, which you can see I had a little bit of refusal to stick to the plastic, and then the thin version on the left was a little bit better. But there's not much in it between those two. And then over here I did the metallic ones just to see what they'd be like. I've got the gunmetal done on these two, and the bottom one is thinned, the top one is unthinned, and you can see that it just didn't want to stick at all to the plastic. And then on the right here I've got the 11 silver, and thinned was on the right and unthinned was on the left, and I think unthinned slightly has that one. But I am under the impression at the moment, given these results, that you're going to need a primer. You will be able to get it onto bare plastic, but you're going to need a primer. And this is the reason why I say that, because looking at this, which is the primed sprue, and on the left of all of these drop tanks I've done the thinned version, and on the right is the unthinned version. 164 looks a little bit better in the unthinned. Humbrol 78 looks almost like it's been airbrushed on unthinned. That's straight out of the bottle. That's really impressive. Number 33 matte black, that's a bit hit and miss. The unthinned one I thought would be better than it actually is, but it isn't, so you're going to need a couple of coats on both of them. Probably would thin mine, but probably not as thin as I made it there, because we've got some sort of discoloration. 116, slightly better when it's thinned, I'd say, looking at this. The white, it is better when it's thinned, but you're going to need a few coats. When it's unthinned, you get these lovely brush marks. And then the dark earth brown, there's not much between it. The unthinned on this side is slightly more pigment dense, as to be expected, but it's ever so slightly on there. So maybe just like literally a drop of thinner would be needed for that. Down the bottom, I've done the khaki brown, number 26. And unthinned on the left and thinned on the right. I think that unthinned has the slight edge there. 129 here, unthinned and thinned, and it's probably the thinned version there has the edge. Number 11 silver, I'd say that on this primer the unthinned version is better. And then what have we got here? Number 53, again, gunmetal grey, that's the unthinned one in my books, has the advantage there. But looking at the greys that we did earlier, 165, yep. Unthinned on the right, you can see lots of brush marks, and then a thinned on the right, sorry, thinned on the left. That's much smoother, but you're going to need a couple of coats. 128, again unthinned, it's quite blotchy, but on the thin side it's much smoother. Down the bottom we've got 157, unthinned here and thinned here. I'd say the unthinned has the slight advantage there. And then at the top we've got the 90, which is the Sky Type S, and out of the bottle it seems okay, but I did thin it down here on this side, and you know, it's okay. It's gonna need a few coats, but I think you could get away with either one. And it's pretty much the same story for the 65. So yeah, it seems that these new Gen 2 paints are a little bit inconsistent, in the sense that some of them, like the 78 here, absolutely beautiful. Even the 116 is quite nice out of the bottle, and you know, the gunmetal one and the silver one, they are good straight out of the bottle, whereas the other ones are going to need thinning. So there is an inconsistency there, but what I do like about them is that they are considerably better than the previous Humbrol versions. We haven't got that sort of pigment blotching. The finish is much smoother. And let's just do a scratch test. Let's do it on 78. Yep, it's hard to get it off. It's a really tough coat of paint compared to the old ones, which would scratch off. I found the thinners that I've been using for this one, they were quite good. They work really well to reduce the density of the paint and also increase the drying time. So yep, I'll definitely use more of these in the future. And although I only used the one of these Palpo brushes, the sable hair ones, I think I used the size 4, I was actually really impressed with that. It was really nice to paint with, and I think that's contributed to the nice smooth finish. So throughout some of my other builds, I'm probably going to use some of the other brushes and things. But anyways, I think it's probably time to wrap this one up. In conclusion, a quick brush test of the different paints that I've got from the Humbrol Gen 2. They are considerably better than the old Humbrol Gen 1, much better on top of the primer paint, and the Humbrol #1 primer that I've used here, actually I'll use that again. It is quite a good product. It's got a nice finish to it. It's even, and the paint that I applied on top went down really well. But yeah, so these new Humbrol Gen 2s, a little bit inconsistent. You're going to have to determine when you've got one, or if you get your hands on these, whether they're going to need thinning. If it comes out quite thin already out of the pot, it probably doesn't need thinning. If it comes out a bit thick, it probably does. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you thought of this quick look at hand painting. In the future, I might be doing an airbrush comparison as well. Quick shout out to my patrons and channel members for the extra support they give my channel. Take a look at the link in the description to find out more. If you're new here and you'd like to make sure you're kept up to date with modelling videos, click that subscribe button, and if you click that like button, it can help other people with a similar interest find this video. Finally, the last thing to say to you is a massive thank you for watching, and I will see you on the workbench again next time.